Well, thank you for having me today. I really loved the series. I only watched like 2 episodes, and that's rare that I say that, but I look forward to like continuing.
Thank
And
you.
so thank you a lot for what you've done. I have like a first question.
Great.
That's an open question. Is there anything that you have not been asked during the promotional interviews that you would like to be asked? Anything you would like to like answer without being asked for?
Oh, sure. About the series itself?
Yeah, whatever.
Well, oh shoot. I'm not sure. I've been asked so many things. I guess what I would really like to start with, I can say that the series is based on a book. It's based on a book called North American Lake Monsters, which is written by this absolutely wonderful, brilliant, and also very kind man named Nathan Ballingrud. And his book was really where the project began. It was the genesis of the series. And I think what I'd like to start by saying is that it was really an honor for me to be able to adapt it and also to work so closely with him, because the stories from the book were quite personal to him. And so to be able to take them and put them on screen was a very like delicate process. So I think part of the creation of Monsterland was very much about how do we make these stories that are so authentic and so real and so painful. How do we translate that onto the screen? And he was really generous the whole time that I was working with him. He became such a very huge part of the process, even came into the writer's room with us for a couple of weeks at the beginning of the process to help create new story ideas that were inspired by the book, but also to talk to us about where the stories came from. And I think, anything worth telling is something that's very hard to tell, something that's very painful to tell. And the stories were really, I think, painful and hard for him to write. And being able to adapt those was it was just such a privilege. So I guess that's something I'd like to start with, because we don't really get to talk about Nathan very much. And he is really, I'm only here because he sat down and wrote a really incredible personal book.
Wow, and you've done an incredible job too. So
Thank you.
let's
Thank
not
you.
forget it too. Okay, so the origins of the project are with this book. How did you get to it?
So in Hollywood, you go on these like general meetings, right? And so you just like a production company or producer or a network will say, hey, we like your work. Why don't you come in and sit down with us and hang out for a while, and maybe we can talk about finding a project together. So I went and I met with our producers in our studio. They became our studio also, Annapurna. And we were just having a general chat, and they were like, what do you want to do? And I said, I really like working in horror. I like the horror space very much. As you can see, I have horror all around me on my flowery wallpaper. But I said, like this is really what I want to do. And they had the rights to the book already, to North American Lake Monsters. And I'm honest to God, they pitched me a bunch of other projects and none of them felt quite right to me. And then I saw the book laying on the coffee table between us, and I was like, what is that book? There was just something about it. I don't know. I believe in magic. I believe in the spirits. I believe in the power of something drawing you to it. And something just drew me to that book. And I was like, what is that? I had just spent almost an entire month in the woods by myself, writing and reading Raymond Carver, like everything Raymond Carver had ever written. And on the book, there was like a little blurb that said something like horror meets Raymond Carver or something like that. And I was just like, this is it. This is my book. Like I have to do it. So I said, what's that book? And they were like, oh, actually, yeah, we own the rights to that book. And there's a director attached. And maybe actually that's a good project for you. So I took it home and I read the first story only. And that story was the one that became our pilot of our series. I only read the first story and I just was like, this is it. This is my project. And, you know, and it's in Hollywood, there's like so much stuff that comes your way. You get past like books and stories and intellectual property, like all the time. And it, you know, a lot of it's really bad. And so like to just like read this and I was like crawling out of my skin. I was like, if I don't write this, I'm going to die, because it really truly felt like my story, like something about his experience and him writing that story. It was just speaking straight through me. So I called my agent and I just said, like, please, whatever we can do, this is my project. And I honest to God hadn't even finished the book before I said I wanted to do it. So then I did obviously finish the book. I did read the book. I promise. But it was just so magical. And I was in love with the idea of this woman who was trapped inside of her life, and couldn't escape, and who did something like so atrocious, so punishable that so many people would punish her for, but yet you also understand what that's like. You know, I think everyone has a moment when they feel just stuck or trapped, and you're desperate and you're just like, what do I do? What do I do right now? And it felt like such a raw, real human experience, but like packaged inside of this like little horror wrapper. And I had never read anything like that before, at least not anything really contemporary that was speaking to like the here and now. And honestly, you know, when I started developing the series, Trump had like just been elected, like just. So you can imagine like what time frame this was. This was about, 4 years ago or whatever. He had just been elected, and I'm from Texas. I'm from a really conservative area. And my immediate family, thank God, did not vote for Trump, and they were not Trump supporters. Hallelujah. I'm also gay, so like thank God, thank double God. But absolutely. But I have so much extended family, so many old friends from Texas. I mean, I live in Los Angeles now, but so many people in my life that were connected to me who were supporting this person who was, in my opinion, just doing evil and doing harm and hurting everyone in this country that I actually really love. And I was so confused by that the idea of like writing stories about just people who were doing really bad things and trying to understand that was a little bit my way of working out like some of what was happening in the country, and some of like my personal connections to aunts and uncles and friends and family who were voting to do harm to people, including harm to myself. And so I don't know, that's a really, really long answer to your question, but that's the genesis of the series and how I came to the book, but also just like why the series was so important to me at this like very particular moment in time and in our country.
It's a really good answer, actually. So thank you very much. Wow. Okay. There's a lot of ideas here to unfold. Maybe I'm curious, because you started this project with Trump being elected, and you're releasing it with Trump just being like, gotten out of the White House. How has it changed? So do you think people will read it the same way, or maybe another question, what are the villains of the future? What about now? before we had like a very clear metaphor. Trump is evil, like Trump represents everything, this segregated America has come to be. What about now? I mean, what's the change?
I mean, I believe that America is still very segregated. It's incredibly segregated. In fact, I don't know, my girlfriend and I talk all the time about how I feel like there is a sense of sort of like people felt a little more regulated when Trump left office and when Biden came into office, but I don't. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's because I have, a lot of anxiety or PTSD, or maybe it's because of my background in sort of a conservative home state, because I still have like associations and connections to people who aren't, getting vaccinated, who believe Biden stole the election, who, you know what I mean? So I still feel very much like, even though it seems like things have changed and thank God he is out of the office, he's still there. And there's not as much change. Change happens so slowly, and like, just because there's a new person, I think, sitting in the Oval doesn't mean that that things are over or better. So I still live with like a little bit of a fear that there are worse times ahead, and that's like awful. That's not optimistic or something, but I do feel like I'm a realist, and I think it's because like we can get, especially like in Los Angeles and Hollywood, I see that people get really trapped inside of a liberal bubble, and forget to look at what's happening in other pockets of the country and middle America. And even in like Northern California, I love to travel. I love to go on road trips. So I drive up and down the coast all the time. And you drive, like 5 hours, upstate, and there are still like Blue Lives Matters flags everywhere, and there are still Trump signs everywhere. And even saying this out loud on a recorded Zoom call gives me a feeling of like fear and anxiety. So I guess I still feel like the show holds water even in a post-Trump America, because I don't really believe it is truly a post-Trump America yet, even though he's out of office. And like, what even is Trump? Like, I don't know. He's a puppet, and I think that like Trump isn't actually the problem. There's a much bigger, much more insidious problem happening in America. And so I think I don't know. I think the show still holds water, and the show, to me, it was always also just about humans, and while there is some political messaging in it, I think it's also very much about like what happens to humans to make them do the things that they do. And there's a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of there's like it's like aftershocks after an earthquake. I feel that's how I feel about America right now. I feel like there is a lot of tension, and a lot of, people have been trapped in their houses for a year now, or if not, then they've been having to go out and do their jobs and risk their health and their well-being and the health and safety of their families for a really long time. There are still my partner is a breast cancer survivor, and she, every time she goes to get a checkup at the hospital, there are anti-vaxxers like protesting at the hospital. One of them came in the hospital last time. So like, there's just still so much turmoil that I think that a show about humans who are behaving in ways that feel problematic and difficult, and making choices that are questionable and possibly immoral, but trying to understand why and how, like, that's still happening. So yeah.
Wow. Really, I think you're right, and I think it's more like dissolved, or maybe less like evident what Trump represents. Absolutely. About this, do you think fiction can help us fight this problem? And how do you think, for example, about representation? How is it important to represent all faces in America in your series?
Well, I mean, I think storytelling is everything. I think it's literally everything. I think post-apocalypse, there's this really great play. I was just talking to my girlfriend about it the other day. It's called Mr. Burns. I think it's called Mr. Burns Lights the Lights.
Okay.
That might not be exactly the right title of the play, but it's basically about like a post-apocalyptic world and the importance of storytelling when there's like really literally nothing else, when the world's on fire, when everything has been destroyed. The thing that we will still have is human connection and storytelling. And I think storytelling is the way that we learn about ourselves. You know, we watch something and like, I mean, especially as a woman, there have been, you know, a legacy of stories about men. And so I've had to put myself into those roles of men. But like, that's how I sort of learned, you know, what the world is like and how people respond to certain things. And sorry, my office is quite loud.
It's fine. I didn't hear anything.
He's really mad in the next room. Everyone's really mad, I'm telling you. But like, but that's how you learn about the world, and that's how you learn to see the world. And so if we're only showcasing stories about white people, about men, about cis people, about straight people, then we are only showing a small percentage of the world. But because those are the stories that we see, we feel like that should be the whole world. We feel like that is the whole world because that's what's given to us, but it's just not. It's not an accurate representation. So when it comes to representation, I guess I just feel like, you know, like growing up as a queer kid in Texas, I really wanted to see stories about lesbians and about young lesbians. And like, you know, I thought lesbians were just like Ellen DeGeneres. I thought they were like older women with like short hair. I didn't know that was a possibility for me because I went to church and being gay was a sin, and there weren't any stories about gay girls that I could like look at and reflect. And so like that's why I think representation is really important, because I don't know, it teaches you something about the world, but it also makes you feel like you're a part of it. You know, and if you don't feel like you're a part of it, it changes your sense of self, your sense of self-esteem, self-worth. And you have to like make that for yourself rather than like finding it out there, like someone handing it to you and saying like, here's a story that might look like yours. I mean, it's just like what I was saying about Nathan's first story. Like there's a woman who is trapped in a terrible situation who needed to find her way out. And I've been that. And I saw what she did and I remember what I did, and it was reflected back at me. And it's like a story like that is like holding up a mirror and saying like, look at yourself, look, examine yourself, you have value, look at what you did and how you did it and why. And so I don't know, I'm winding around, but representation is just so important because everyone deserves to have that mirror put in front of them so that they can see themselves as part of a litany of stories, and as a character, as the main character in the world. Like everyone deserves that.
Absolutely. I mean, I totally agree. I am non-binary, and here in Spain we have like literally zero non-binary characters, maybe one or two or something.
Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like where, I mean, like I'm even like a white queer person, and it's still harder to find, you know, stories about myself as like the lead. And I'm working on a show right now that's about a young queer girl who growing up in Texas, because like there hasn't been that story for in this sort of like pocket of like, you know, ultra conservative Christian, evangelical Christian culture. Like that is so many people's story, and I haven't really seen that yet. So I feel like it's representation is something that it's a word that just gets thrown around a lot because I feel like it makes liberal people feel good when they're thinking about and talking about representation, but like it actually is important because had I been a little girl and seeing a version of myself instead of having to imagine myself as the male lead that I was watching, it would have made such a difference in my life. I came out so late in life. I came out when I was in my 30s. I was in my early 30s, and it's been I've been like basically going through puberty in my 30s, but part of that is just because like it's taken me this long to figure it out, because storytelling is the method through which we examine ourselves and our lives. That's why like reading fiction is so important. I know a lot of people will be like, oh, I don't read fiction. I only read, like historical books. I only read like real stories. But no, fiction asks you to please imagine yourself in this person's shoes, like see yourself reflected in this character. And I think that's how we learn. That's how we develop our empathy center. That's how we learn about ourselves and about other people. So I could talk for days about how important I think storytelling is. And I think that's why I feel so grateful that I get to do it as a career, because I get to start to choose then what stories I want to put out into the world. And representation really matters. It's not just a fancy word that television executives can throw around. It's an actual real important thing.
I could be like listening to you for days, so please don't worry. I think we're running out of time, so let me ask you just one last question.
Sure.
I would like to know other female creators, especially showrunners, that you recommend right now, because I think everyone can be interested in this kind of fiction.
Yeah, I want to plug one show that I think is really important right now, and it just came out. And so I think everyone should watch it. It's called Made, MAID.
Mm-hmm.
Came out on Netflix. I watched it so quickly, and it is a female showrunner. I believe she started as a playwright. She hired a staff of almost exclusively playwrights. Her name is Molly Smith Metzler is how you pronounce her last name. Okay. I don't know her personally, but we have so many different friends in common, and I've been hearing about this woman for such a long time. And I feel so proud that she finally has a series that it's truly profound. And it is about, it is very female centric, and it is about domestic violence, which is something I'm very, very passionate about. And it is one of the only, in my opinion, real representations of what emotional and domestic abuse can actually look like, like for real. Like I think there's the Hollywood version of it where like, a man just gets so angry and like, beats the heck out of a woman or something like that. But this actually feels like it's that sort of like granular kind of devolution. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm making it a word of like a relationship. But the series is also very full of love and joy and magic and theatricality. And it's just so female centric that I feel like that's the show. If anyone's looking for a great show by an incredible female showrunner, like that's the one. Run to it. Go and watch it now.
Made in Netflix.
Made, MAID. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Wow. Thank you so much, Mary. I mean, it's been a lovely conversation. I'm not lying.
So nice to talk to you. Really, really nice to talk to you. It's my pleasure.
Absolutely. I don't know if you have to run or something.
I do. I think I have to go at 11. I'm so sorry.
It's fine. I mean, perfectly fine. Please keep on doing what you're doing. It's great.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You too. Thank you. This has been a really nice conversation.
Thank you.